Hey friends, we're off here again with the Louisville ProActivist Report in the middle of campaign season, just bringing you another interview with some great guests today, multiple guests as a matter of fact. And I'm doing my first show with judicial candidates, so I'm really excited to do this. So I've got 5 candidates here with me, so I'm gonna let them introduce themselves. So let me get that camera switch for you all. While I'm doing that, make sure you're sharing this out. Click the like and all that good stuff. Help me get this out to as many people as possible. All right, there we go. So I'm just going to start over here and I'll just let each of you introduce yourselves.
Hi, I am Attorney Tracy Davis. I am running here in Jefferson County for Circuit Court Judge in Division 5.
Hello, I'm Karen Faulkner. I'm also an attorney here in Louisville, and I'm running for District Court Judge, Division 8.
I'm Shannon Fauver. I'm running in Jefferson County District Court 7. It is countywide, just so you know. So you can vote for all of us.
I'll say real quick, none of these candidates are running against each other, so you can vote for all of these if you like.
Hi, I'm Ted Shouse, and I'm running for Jefferson Circuit Court Judge in Division 7.
And my name is Yvette de la Guardia, and I'm running for Jefferson District Court Judge in Division 4. But as Shannon said, these are countywide races. So no matter where you live in Jefferson County, you can vote for each person in this room.
All right, and before we get into each one of you individually, I'm just going to turn to Ted here. Just, for the voters who aren't aware, what is the difference between district court and circuit court?
The difference between district court and circuit court, they're both courts of general jurisdiction, which means they have trials. District court cases are primarily confined to civil cases where the amount in controversy, the amount of money people are fighting over, is less than $5,000. And in criminal cases, the potential punishment is 12 months or less in the county jail. In circuit court, the amount in controversy, the amount of money that people are concerned about is $5,000 or above, and felonies, which are defined as crimes that carry a year or more in prison. So anything with 1 to 20 to life up to the death penalty, those are the criminal cases that circuit court hears. So Tracy and I are running for circuit court, and the other 3 folks at the table are running for district court judge.
All right, thank you for that, Ted. We'll go ahead and dive into it here. And I'm going to start with Tracy. So if you would, Tracy, just tell us a little bit about yourself, just as a person and your ties to the city.
Okay. Well, like I said, my name is Tracy Davis. I was born and raised here in Louisville, Kentucky. I grew up in a neighborhood which we affectionately call Fort Hill or Schnitzelburg. My family has been in that neighborhood since about 1880. So my great grandmother was born there. My grandmother was born there. My mother, my sisters, myself. It's very family oriented. I went to all the schools that we check off for Louisville. I went to Mazik, I went to Manual, I went to UK, and then, unlike many, I went to law school at night. So I commuted here from Louisville, working full time, up to Salmon P. Chase College of Law, which is up in northern Kentucky. It is about 97 miles one way. So I did that for 4 years, anywhere from 3 to 5 days a week. I had 3 children at the time. They were all in school, and I was a single parent at that time. A lot of people ask me why Chase. Well, Chase is a great school, right? Justice Wintersheimer was a professor there. Many of the Supreme Court justices have ties there, like Justice Keller actually went there. She was my trial team coach. They have a very hands-on approach. And at the time that I entered into law school, U of L actually was ending their night program. And so Chase was the closest college that offered a full curriculum night program in the state of Kentucky. A little bit about myself. I am community oriented. I'm a volunteer on numerous boards. I go out into the community a lot. You probably see my face anywhere from the West End to far in the East End. I've got 3 beautiful children. They are 22, 23, and 25. And I also have 2 wonderful, precious grandchildren that one just turned 1, the other one is 2.5. So that's pretty much briefly a little bit about me and my tenacity and my ties to Louisville.
Thank you. Karen?
Well, I actually grew up in Lexington. I came to Louisville because I was recruited to U of L as a creative writing major. So I took a little bit different path. In college, I was focusing on creative writing and theater. Arts have always been a strong part of what I do. I'm actually pretty tied to the theater community here in Louisville. In undergrad, I really started to explore and focus on the law. I had had a cousin who had gone down to South Africa during civil unrest and was part of the legal team that was working on reforming their government and rewriting their constitution. And I really admired that, and her helping people. And she was a first generation lawyer in my family. I'm also a first generation college graduate, a first generation lawyer. My parents are both hardworking and did everything they could to give me an opportunity. And when I came to Louisville, I just fell in love with the city. I decided I want this to be my home. And because of what I was doing in undergrad, I was very connected to the Brandeis School of Law, and ultimately decided that's where I wanted to be, is at Brandeis, and applied only there. So I was in law school there at Brandeis, and once I graduated, I ultimately decided I wanted to continue to help people and began working at the public defender's office. Now, years later, I really want to continue to help the city. I do everything I can to stay involved and connected. I'm a mom. I have two beautiful boys. I have a 7-year-old and I have a 19-month-old. My 7-year-old is at Field Elementary, and I serve on the PTA there. I'm involved with all the legal programs in the various high schools. I coach Manuel's mock trial team. I serve on boards here in Louisville and volunteer throughout the community. And so I really believe that, being connected to our community, being connected to our fellow Louisvillians is extremely important, and want to continue that community connection on the bench.
Thank you. Shannon?
I'm Shannon Fauver. My family's actually lived in the same neighborhood since 1873. That's Crescent Hill now, but when I was really little, we lived in the South End. So my mom bought a house there. And then we moved back into Crescent Hill, and I've lived there since I was 4. So we did the whole Field there. I did a year of Collegiate. That didn't work out for me. And then I went to Atherton. Private school is not my thing. And then I was going to be a veterinarian, but when I was in school, I decided that maybe that wasn't what I wanted to do. So I went to Peace Corps. My uncle was director of Peace Corps when I was little, and I always thought that was awesome because you can go help people. And my family is cops on one side and lawyers on the other. So they always told me if I got in trouble, I was in a lot of trouble. So I figured I would figure out how to not get in trouble, and I would decide to be a lawyer later after Peace Corps. Peace Corps inspired me to help people that don't have voice, because when I was overseas, it's hard to function if you don't know what's going on. So that's why I went to law school, and I started my own practice with a 2-year-old, and I was pregnant with a little one because I wanted to be there. And I only missed 4 or 5 field trips their entire life. They both turned 18, 21 recently. And after I've had a case that went to Supreme Court, I decided that was the best way to help people, is because I've seen what happens if we don't have judges on the bench, that people that we feel like they're making good decisions. So that's why I'm running now.
It's really cool that you're in the Peace Corps. My mom actually joined when they first founded, so she was one of the very first people in it.
Awesome.
So.
We have a big return Peace Corps group here.
Okay, Ted?
Hi, my name's Ted Shouse. I was born and raised here in Louisville. My mom grew up in the West End. My dad grew up in Crescent Hill. I grew up in the Highlands. I've been a lawyer for 23 years. I went to law school primarily to help people charged with criminal charges. That's what I've done for the last 23 years. Primarily, I represent economically disadvantaged people facing serious criminal charges. So my clients are facing the death penalty. In 2020, when racial justice protests happened after the police killed Breonna Taylor, I and another lawyer organized a group of 112 volunteer lawyers to represent protesters arrested for free. Some of those cases are still pending. I'm in trial next month on 4 of those protesters. That'll happen in early November. Things I want to focus on are, I want to start a new second mental health court immediately. I want to reform the way search warrants are obtained here in Jefferson County, and I want to improve transparency on the circuit court bench. primarily by returning the discovery, that's the evidence against someone charged with a crime, to the public file, so that the public and the media have access to that evidence. Thanks.
Hello again, Yvette here. So I'm the daughter of a brilliant Panamanian immigrant and a super tough lady from New York City. My parents they made Kentucky their home because they are racetrackers. My dad was a jockey, shout out Trifecta Fred, and my mom was a hot walker. And so I'm very much a proud kid from the backside. I'm a first generation American, obviously on my dad's side. I was first generation college grad, first generation law school grad. I went to the University of Kentucky after spending a year working at the Upward Bound program at UT Knoxville. And if you don't know, that's an academic enrichment program for first generation and economically disadvantaged kids like me who wanted to go to a 4-year college or university. I left UT because I wanted to be a juvenile defense attorney. I wanted to represent kids who were charged with offenses who couldn't afford counsel. So I ended up in Louisville because it is the only place in Kentucky where you can do juvenile public defense work exclusively. Juvenile court happens every day, twice a day in Louisville, whereas in other places out in the state, it might happen once a month. So for the first 4.5 years of my practice, I was representing kids in district court, representing kids in family court who were charged with offenses like truancy and running away from home, and sadly, kids who were being tried as adults in circuit court. That was really emotionally taxing and difficult. I was really good at it. I loved my clients and their families and just felt like I couldn't always do enough. So when an opportunity to become an appellate attorney became available at the PD's office, I applied and I was awarded or earned that position. And so for the last 4.5 years, I have been representing poor people in the Kentucky Supreme Court and the Kentucky Court of Appeals pretty successfully. I decided to run because, well, first of all, I never thought I would do anything but advocate. But I was approached and encouraged, and people who I trust and love told me that they believed that I could do this and that I would be a good judge, and I agreed. So I decided to run because Jefferson County needs a different bench. You need to have judges who know what it's like to have like a car repair bill wipe out your bank account and how that can affect you when you are having to catch the TARC and bring your kids to court with you to pay a speeding ticket. We just need, I think, to have a bench that is more reflective of the community that it serves. So that's what I hope to add to the bench this fall.
Well, thank you very much. So let's talk a little bit about your qualifications and your experience. I'm going to start with you, Karen, on this one here.
Great. So I have been practicing for 17 years. As I mentioned before, I started out as a public defender. Like Yvette, I was a juvenile public defender when I began at the public defender's office. And then I transferred to the adult division, and I stayed there for 6.5 years. I left and formed my own private practice, originally with my best friend, which was really a blast. She has since become a judge, and now I run my own firm, Faulkner Law. I've had over 20 jury trials. I've had hundreds of bench trials. I have practiced in every area of district court, circuit court, family court, and federal court, as well as courts throughout the state. In my private practice, I continue to do a volume of indigent work. I'm conflict counsel for the Department of Public Advocacy and the Louisville Metro Public Defender. I run a pro bono expungement program out of my office, which I started with my former law partner, where anyone who is below the federal poverty guideline, we will do Class D felony expungements for free. I continue to work with the expungement programs at Legal Aid and currently serve as the expungement attorney for the law library. As Ted mentioned, he started a program of pro bono attorneys during the protests, and I served as one of those attorneys with him and was able to successfully get many of those cases dismissed. My experience is voluminous. I am a think it's important to have an attorney who's had an extensive amount of jury trials, who understands the rules of evidence. But beyond my legal experience, I think my life experience is important. As I mentioned, I've always been on the defense side. I've worked with people. I understand what it's like to sit with someone in court, understand the reasons that often people come to court, the difficulty people have when they have poverty issues or mental health issues or the drug addiction issues that is riddling our community. And I really liked what Yvette said about bringing that perspective to the bench, understanding what it's like to not come from privilege, or to, even if I have not experienced the same things as everybody has as in court, I can at least empathize and know that I have had that human connection. I've been to many clients' birthday parties and graduations, and everyone that walks in district court is a person and needs to be treated as a person. So that's a little bit about my experience and why I think that I'm the best candidate in my race for district court.
Okay, Shannon?
I have been practicing law for 18 years. They give you the bio with, with the kids. We do the whole, every parent teacher conference, every event my kids are at, that's why I practice for myself. I've always represented my clients individually. So over 3,000 clients that I've represented, like I said, from traffic courts to the U.S. Supreme Court. I do a lot of pro bono work still. You have some protester cases. I've done a lot of stuff in Eastern Kentucky. They were taken away. There's some other Social Security because an attorney was defrauding the government, and those cases have been going on for years, and they're still going on. I have to represent 30 people there. I think that I've seen what it looks like for our clients to come through. And my mom was a single mom. I've been a single mom. We all know luckily unfortunately, most people do know what that looks like, but some of the judges we've had don't know what it is to be poor or hungry, or what it looks like if you don't have the money to pay. We've seen clients come into court and they don't have the court cost, and you can get thrown in jail for that, depending on some of the judges. So that's not right. And I think that's why it's important to have people that haven't been there and know what's going on, or at least recognize it when they come in. Well, I'll say, everybody should be treated fairly and equally. That's what we're supposed to do. That's the basis. So it has to be more than that. You have to look at people individually, everyone that comes in front of you, as Karen said. And I think the fact that I represent people throughout, from traffic court, all the federal courts, and to the Supreme Court, I'm the best qualified person to represent people in my race.
Okay, Ted?
Hi again, Ted Shouse. I've been a lawyer for 23 years. My practice is a little unusual, and it takes me all over the state. I've tried cases from one end of the state to the other in those 23 years. I've taught all 3 of Kentucky's law schools as an adjunct faculty member. I've had cases at every level of state and federal court, both here locally and had a case go to the U.S. Supreme Court. I think what I bring to this race is a different lens. Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor, I'm a big fan of hers. She said that the lens through which a judge views the cases before them is important. That lens determines what facts you think are important, what the procedural posture of the case should be, an appreciation of the people that are before you. That's what I really think I bring, that and a commitment to change. I think it was Yvette who said earlier that this is an opportunity we have to send the judicial branch of our local government in a new direction. I think everyone at this table and other people who are running countywide give us an opportunity to change the way the judicial branch of our local government functions. And that's why I'm running.
Yvette?
So I was a career public defender. I represented kids, like I said, for the first 4.5 years. I tried cases in circuit court. I tried cases in family court, bench trials, jury trials. And after that, I started doing appellate work, in part because I thought it might be more fair, honestly. I thought, these are appellate judges who don't see people every day, and the burnout might be different, and the law is the law, precedent is precedent. This is just going to be academic, and things are going to be better in the appellate system. And I quickly learned, because of concepts like harmless error, that it's really important to have good trial judges, because you don't often get the relief that you think that you should get in the appellate system. So having tried cases, for the last 4.5 years, literally just sitting with the law every single day, applying it to my cases, and again, with a lot of success, I think I'm uniquely qualified and skilled, really, to be a really good trial judge. And I'm excited and looking forward to the opportunity.
Tracy?
Hello. I have been in private practice for the last 9 years. I fell in love with trial advocacy at Chase. I had a great professor by the name of Professor Kazee. If anybody out there knows who I'm talking about, you probably just had a trigger and a switch, because he was just that person in law school. But I fell in love with trial, and I fell in love with looking at facts and looking at things and realizing that once going through law school, a lot of times you saw a disparate impact or a different impact for those that were marginalized, those that didn't have education, those that didn't really have a voice or a education background to be able to articulate themselves the way that they needed to for it to come across in the courtroom. And so I decided that once I graduated, after sacrificing everything and time with my children, that I wanted to work for myself, and I wanted to be able to pick the cases that resonated with my heart. I wanted to be able to actually be the change that I talked about, and to be that person to advocate for the people that I grew up with and the people that were around me. Like I said, I had my first kid, my first day of school in high school. I was 17 years old at DuPont Manual High School, and at 3:20 p.m., I gave birth to my first kid. So when you think about where I am today, a lot of people would say that, because my mom doesn't have a degree, my dad doesn't have a degree, that I don't deserve to be here. And that is nothing further from the truth. I'm reminded, I think you all saw the post, Dan Cannon had posted about, passing the bar and what that takes. And it resonated so much with me, because I think that myself, and I can speak for my colleagues, not endorsing them, but the ones at this table, we are the rebels. We are the ones that go in court. We push the envelope. We ask questions. We challenge things. We challenge rulings. And I think it's a lot different when you yourself have actually practiced, when you yourself have actually taken the time to put a case together, when you yourself have actually sat down and reviewed documents and reviewed discovery and talked to police officers and have a rapport with them. And so you understand the processes, you understand what's supposed to happen and what's not supposed to happen. And you also know that when you get before that judge, you have about 10 to 15 minutes to articulate to someone something that went on in the course of somebody else's life for years, right? And so sitting in that seat, you get but a small snapshot. And I'm sure that when I get there, because I'm going to get there, there's so many questions. There's so many things that you wish had been said. There's so many times that you wanted to jump out of your seat, and to help and to say, no, don't say that, or you need to object, or whatever the case may be. And you can't do that, right? Sitting there, you have to allow the law to work. But what you can do is you can apply the law. What you can do is, when you know that there's going to be an outcome that is unjust, you can use your judicial discretion, right? To be fair, you have leeway to bring in different resources and things of that nature. And those are the things that I have advocated for. So, because I live in this community, if someone tells me, well, I was on the 25 bus and it was late and the next bus connection didn't come until this time, well, I live in the community. I know which buses are late. I know where the connects are. I know, if you tell me you're somewhere, right? I understand that if the last bus ran at 7:00 and you're on home incarceration and you literally had to walk home, right, 10 miles because no one else could come and get you. I know what that looks like. I know what that feels like. And I know what it feels like to have to advocate and convey to a whole team of people why you deserve a second chance and why you are trying so much harder than anyone else, right, in the world, because all cards are stacked against you. And I think that those are the things that when you actually practice, when you actually are out in your community, when you give back to your community, and when you listen, right, to your community. I don't have to actually go through something to be able to go out there and to talk to someone and connect with them and to be enlightened and to be able to want to understand that. And I think that that is when you've been in private practice or you've been a public defender or even a prosecutor, but you've actually been in the courtroom. I think that those are the things that really matter. What I can tell you is that I have actually had cases in district court. I've been in circuit court. I have been in federal court. You name it. And so I understand how every ruling in one case can be extrapolated and can affect you in every other case that you have, including family court, including CPS cases, things of that nature. And I think that it is so important that we have judges on the bench who have that practical knowledge, who know that people are more than just, what us law gurus would call fact patterns, but you're not just theories, right? And that every decision that is made for that bench not only affects the person sitting in front of you, but affects their family, affects their children, affects their employers. And it's a ripple. And I think that everybody wants justice. It just looks different. I think that everybody wants to be safe. I think that people, want to be heard. And I think that it's time to put people in those seats who will have an ear to listen, and not only listen, but to understand. And so that is what my practice has been, anywhere from a traffic ticket to sitting second chair in a murder trial. I've done it all. I've been in family court and guardian ad litem, you name it. I've pretty much done it, and I've enjoyed it. But there's only so much you can do from this side in advocating and presenting. It's time to take it to that next level so we can really effectuate changes. So that's why I'm running, and that's why I hope to have your vote.
Damn, I just want to steal all that. I'll take all that.
So ditto for everyone on there. So I know you've got another event to get to tonight, so I'm going to stick with you on these next couple questions before we move along. Just kind of in plain English, tell everybody what your judicial philosophy is.
I'm going to be crass here and say that I don't really think that I have a judicial philosophy, because I think that it's cliche, but it always depends, right? I think that as a jurist or as a judge, you need to actually understand the law. You need to understand the policies behind the laws and why they were created. You need to understand who they impact, right? And what the target of that is. You need to be able to look at laws and say, is this constitutional, right? And not just being unconstitutional on its face when we look at it, but is there what's called a disparate impact? If this law looks like it's an okay law and everybody says it's for a good reason, when it's applied, right, does it hurt people, right? Does it disenfranchise people, right? Does it have a disparate impact on women or on immigrants or on children or on the poor, et cetera? Those are the things that the judicial branch does. We bring about balance. There's a reason for that, right? You have the executive branch that does their job. You have a legislative branch that makes the rules and laws. And then when there's a conflict therein, you have people that sit on the bench, that correct those, and they make sure that they are doing what they're intended to do, or sometimes reversing what they're intended to do because that's wrong. I know that a lot of times they asked about, they have the argument about Justice Scalia versus Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Justice Scalia was a, plain meaning person, and he interpreted everything for the time that it was written and what the intent was. But what I will say is that we are all living, breathing people, right? If you wake up and you feel pain, then you're human, right? And you're alive. But to take it a step further is when you can feel other person's pain. And I think that, as we grow every day, we change. And so just like the United States today is nothing like it looked, hundreds of years ago, I believe that the crucible and the intent of some of the laws that we have, yes, they will live forever. But how we apply them, how we interpret them, how they should be interpreted, things of that nature, I think that those things change. And I think that, we have to be able to ebb and to flow as our society evolves. And so that's what I believe should happen on the bench. I think that, you never should stop listening. You never should stop learning. You never should stop being involved. Of course, it's a different perspective because now you're on the bench, so you have to remove yourself from a lot of things, but you have to be deliberate and intentional so that you don't become so far removed that you forget. So, in a nutshell.
So what is your philosophy on recusal, and how would you handle conflicts of interest on the bench?
So I think that people get recusal, I'll speak from laypersons, right? Get recusal confused. The time that someone is to recuse themselves is when there would be an unfair or a bias, right, opinion, or where because of your relationship with one of the parties or with the officer or whatever it is, would put you in a position to where it could be looked at as being prejudicial to one of the parties. I think that there are definitely times that you should recuse yourself. I think that if you are aware of a situation, that as a judge, you should make everyone aware of that. And then even if they don't bring it up, give them the opportunity to say whether or not they feel comfortable with you being able to preside over an issue, right? I think this comes up a lot more in your smaller counties because you have one judge that handles every single case. And so if your mom owns the laundromat and someone slipped and fell across the street, you may think, oh, well, my mom has a relationship with those people, so I'm going to be prejudicial. And the truth of the matter is that me sitting on the bench, I can say, no, I promise you I will apply the law. I promise you I will be fair. I promise you I will be just. But there are times where it's not always about whether or not you can do that. It's about how that looks, right? It's about the impression that it gives. And so I believe that there are 13 circuit court seats. I am not the person that would be so hell-bent on keeping a case or controlling a case that I would not reach out to one of my colleagues and say, hey, here's this issue, may not be big, may be huge, but we're going to trade cases. And that's kind of what happens is if I give a case to, say, Ted on the bench, then what he will do is he'll take one of his cases and he'll give it to me. That way the bulk of the work or the workload doesn't change. But I'm into transparency and into full disclosure. And I think that that's the only way that you can really be fair and make people believe that they really have a fair shake at the justice system.
All right, last question for you before you get out of here.
Okay.
What have been the most effective methods for improving court efficiency and procedures? And do you have any other methods that you would suggest?
Well, first of all, I would say keeping the court staffed, right? Making sure that we have bench clerks and making sure that we have our stepping clerks and, things of that nature. Obviously, there is a employee shortage everywhere, including in the court system. But I think that when you do have the bench clerks and stepping clerks and administrative people that are happy, right, that are pleasant, I think that things do get done and they get done expeditiously. I'm a strong supporter of technology. I think we all use technology. We all now we're on Zoom or whatever this is, Facebook Live with computers and video cameras and things of that nature, which doing this 15 years ago would have took a whole production team, right? I do believe that I like electronic filing. I do like orders being issued electronically. I think that for me, it helps tremendously because I get an order in real time. So the second that it is entered, I get notice. And that second, not only do I get notice, but the opposing side gets notice and everybody knows. I can then go to that order, pull it down, and give it to my client immediately because you only have 10 days to appeal an order, right? That is a final order. And so if you're getting mail and you don't get that order until Monday or Tuesday and it was entered on Thursday, you've lost 4 or 5 days. And now you're rushing and trying to get things done. I wish that they would open that up more to the public because I believe that if you can walk into the courtroom and you can see a file, that should be accessible. I believe in Zoom court or some form of Zoom court. I believe in court being streamed publicly. I'm still trying to flesh this out in my mind, but I'm just reminded of the times that we have court, especially on a criminal case, and it's a felony case. And, every single court date, that person has to be present in person. And we come into the courtroom and we know that we're going to be there for 2 or 3 minutes because mostly it's about negotiating. It's about doing this or that. And because some judges want to get things done fast and they get frustrated, it's, well, we're coming back next week or we're coming back in 2 weeks. And the thing is it's like, we can do that, but that hurts my client because they took off from work and they had to catch 3 buses and they had to get a babysitter and they don't get paid because they're hourly and, they're on probation for this and they're not going to be in compliance because of again, everything being stacked against them. I think that will make things more efficient because they can tap in, make sure you can see their face, as long as it's not something, crucial at a crucial point in a trial. I think that helps. I think that will be expeditious. Another thing that I think that I would like to bring is, especially on civil cases, giving pre-rulings. letting, the attorneys know, I've looked at the pleadings, I've looked at XYZ. This is what my ruling would be. Is there anything else that you all need to tell me, that you all need to argue before me? Because if not, this is what it is. I think that saves time. I think that makes it more effective. I think allowing civil attorneys to be able to come in through Zoom, it will allow them to cut down on a lot of the wait time. It will also help to impact your clients because they're not paying money while their case isn't moving forward, and you're driving or you're sitting and you're waiting, and it'll cut down a lot on stress, because I know a lot of attorneys are stressed out. We've got a high suicide rate, we've got a high substance abuse rate, but I think that those are things that we can do to streamline the process. It'll be a lot of money in the beginning, but in the long run, I think that it'll make it to where it's a lot more efficient, a lot more effective, and it'll save a lot more money. So those are some of the things that I think.
All right. So just make your final pitch to the voters why they should vote for you, and let people know how to follow you online, and how to donate, how to volunteer.
Absolutely. Well, you should vote for me because I'm great. No, I'm just kidding. You should vote for me because I'm hardworking. In my campaign or whatnot, I carry the tables, I carry the signs. I'm out there pounding the pavement. I'm knocking on doors. I'm going anywhere and everywhere where there's a voter is. I'm going to speak to you. I'm going to talk to you. I want to hear your story. I want to learn from you. I am running for, in my race or in circuit court here, this is the only seat where there is an incumbent judge. Okay. I'm running against Judge Mary Shaw. You can Google it yourself. You can Google the cases or whatever the case may be. I think that it is important that we as a community begin to heal. I think that it is important that we as a community learn how to trust the persons that are on the bench. I believe that as a community, it's time for us to be able to know the people that are on the bench, and for them to be approachable, acceptable, accessible, and to really, want to make change, to want to see things from both sides, to be willing to work things out, regardless, and to be open and open-minded. I can tell you that I worked very hard all last couple of years. I worked with Ted and with Courtney Kellner, doing a lot of pro bono cases. Some of them got indicted, some of them did not. Many got dismissed. I actually was one of the attorneys that helped with Until Freedom when they did the sit-ins on Daniel Cameron's porch, and not his porch, but on his lawn. I may or may not have been across the street watching as things were happening or whatnot legally. And I think that it's important, it's fair that when things are unjust, we have a voice. When things are wrong, we can use our voice, and we should be able to do that without persecution. The only way that things ever change is if someone takes the step forward and they speak up. And it doesn't always look good. It doesn't always feel good. But this race in particular was very important to me. And so I decided to run in this race. And so I'm asking you on November the 8th to flip your ballot over, to scroll down to Division 5, and to vote Tracy E. Davis as your next circuit court judge for Division 5. And if you vote early, I don't want you to do that on the 3rd, the 4th, or the 5th. Thank you. Oh, and you can go to www.votedavisforjudge.com. That is my website. You can go just Google me, and all my Facebook stuff will pop up. Give me a call, shoot me a message, and I promise you I personally will return it.
Thank you so much, Tracy.
Thank
I know you got
you.
another event to get to, and I really appreciate you making time to squeeze this in.
Thank
Best of
you.
luck to you.
Thanks.
And thank you to all of you as well for allowing me to kind of restructure this so we could get Tracy in and out of here. So I'm going to go back to you here, Karen. We're going to go back to judicial philosophies. So just talk about yours in plain English, if you would.
Sure. So I say on the campaign trail whenever I'm talking to vote fairness, vote progress, vote Faulkner. And what I mean by that is I do think that our court systems need to be moving forward. I feel like everyone in the room has kind of touched on this already, but when I talk about moving forward, it's having that different perspective on the bench, having someone with my kind of experience, having someone who has sat with clients, having someone who has had jury trials, who understands not having it easy and understands what the clients go through. When I talk about progress,
I would really like to see district court not have everyone be in there just be a number. We need to start looking at individuals that come in court, whether they are the victim or whether they are the accused. We need to try to figure out the why. Why are we here in court? Is there something that district court can do to help? Do we need to be looking at drug treatment, mental health treatment? Do we need to be looking at some other alternative sentence? I'm also a huge supporter of the restorative justice program. I was part of the pilot project. I was with that program when they started in just 2 zip codes here in Jefferson County for juveniles only. I stayed with that program as it expanded out to juveniles, and now continue to have my clients referred who are juveniles or adults, and have been asked to speak on that topic several places, including the Brandeis School of Law. And what restorative justice is where the victim and the accused sit together and try to come up with a solution together. And what's so impactful about that is that everyone has a voice when they come to the table. And when someone understands what they've done, how that really hurts someone, and the person who has had a crime committed against them understands the perspective of the person who committed that crime, there's a healing that happens. And because a lot of crime happens within our own neighborhoods, within our own communities, on our streets, in our churches, that type of healing is so important. So looking at that different way that we can stop doing the same thing and expecting a different result. Start trying alternatives. Start looking at differences. I also am a firm believer in the transparency of courts and the availability of judges. I think that attorneys need to be able to access judges easier, and I think the general public needs to access judges easier. I think that if we start to become more active in the community and create district court as a mecca of opportunity rather than just incarceration, I think we can move a lot farther.
Shannon?
Well, a lot of what they both said probably covers for all of us, because we want to become judges because we believe we're the best choices, because we need new voices in the system. One thing, and I know I've talked about before, but not with you all, but I've talked about having a homeless court, because I think we need that. It is actually federally funded across the country, so it's not money from us. The money is actually sitting there. So I looked into it because there's over 30 across the country. A lot of people come in, and because they're on the street for whatever reason, they lost their job, so now they're living in a car, but they don't need jail, they need services. So I think that's part of my philosophy, is trying to find another way to treat payment people, because they don't need to come to court. They need to go where they need to be, if it be it job placement, mental health care, whatever. They don't need to be coming in court for that kind of stuff, because that just, it also looks bad. Because if you come to court, you might lose your job because your boss knows you were in court, even though it was something minor that had nothing to do with anything being wrong. We were just there. So my basic philosophy is everybody should be treated with respect, and they should be treated in a way that does not diminish anybody when they're in court, because people make decisions, and sometimes you make a bad decision, but that doesn't mean it should follow you the rest of your life, basically.
Ted?
Well, first of all, I sometimes answer this question by saying that I'm not sure that a trial court judge is entitled to have a judicial philosophy. I'll be bound by the rules, the statutes of the state of Kentucky in the cases that come before me. Judicial philosophies are usually for appellate court judges. But I do want to say a couple of things that would be guiding principles for me. And the first of those would be an absolute rigorous adherence to recognizing the dignity and the humanity of everyone that comes before me. not one side or the other, but every single person. We've all talked about transparency. I think that's a theme in this election cycle that several candidates are pushing. I think we've got to have increased transparency. And one of the reasons for that, and maybe the overarching philosophy I would say that I have, is a desire to restore some trust in the court system. I think large swaths of our community have lost trust in the court system. They've lost trust in the judges. They've lost faith in how things are done. By restoring transparency, by adhering to a rigorous code of dignity of the people that come before you, that's how trust is built. That's how the public can wake up knowing that justice is being done in their name in the courthouse here in Jefferson County. And quite frankly, we've lost that. And a lot of that can be laid at the feet of the judges that have come for the last 20 or 30 years in Jefferson County. There's just no way around that. In the wake of the events of 2020, the legislative branch did something. The executive branch did something. The judicial branch has done nothing. And that's one of the things that inspired me to run in this race, to get in there and to try to change things by doing things like creating a second mental health court. The American criminal justice system is the largest mental health provider on earth. And we do a terrible job at it. And so recognizing that the root cause of a lot of criminal behavior, or what we classify as criminal behavior, is rooted in mental illness is a way to address that. And finally, I think underlying anything that I would undertake on the bench would be a frank and what I call a loving honesty of recognizing the systemic racial and economic inequalities that exist in our court system. It's not just here in Jefferson County. I'm not indicting anyone specifically here in Jefferson County. I think we have to recognize that those inequalities exist across Kentucky. They're exacerbated by local conditions on the ground here in Jefferson County. But I think the only way to affect that systemic change that is required is for the individual judges to every day recognize just the basic reality that those inequalities exist. I think there are a lot of people in our community that still don't recognize that that is the fundamental reality of our court system. And until we can come to grips with that basic understanding, I don't see how we move forward and restore trust in the court process. And so that's not really a philosophy. It's just my approach to the job on day one.
Yvette?
So I believe that the role of a judge is to read, interpret, and apply the laws enacted by the legislature fairly and objectively to every person that comes before them. That's kind of what Ted was saying. That's the job. You don't get to create law. You don't get to not apply the law because you don't like it. Judges have to apply the law. And I think that because there's this image that, or this idea that judges are these sort of like stoic arbiters of justice, that there's a disconnect with the community and the bench. And I think it's so important when we're talking about things like being more transparent and judges being more accessible, that judges be community minded and that they be present in the community. It's been my experience as a first-time candidate that people all over the community want to know who their judicial candidates are. They want to know about the court process, but that information is not always easy to find. And a lot of times just naturally folks, I think, they aren't curious about this kind of stuff until this situation presents itself in their lives. And I think when you have people like judicial candidates who are going into schools and parks and neighborhoods and just meeting folks and answering questions that they have, because people have questions about judges and their decisions all the time, that you start to build relationships. And then in that way, the result is that you rebuild trust, that you have people understand, oh, I know Yvette de la Guardia. It's really important to her to follow the law and to treat everyone fairly. If she did something, if she did this in this case, it has to be the right thing to do. That's what I hope to accomplish as a judge. And I think that it just takes work it's going to take work on my part. And it's important for me to put myself out there and to be present and accessible and just what a judge should be. So, yeah.
All right. So 2 more questions for all of you, and I'm going to start with you, Ted, on this next one. That is, what is your philosophy on recusal and how would you handle conflicts of interest on the bench?
Well, the guiding principle here, I think, is the appearance of impropriety. It's not even that something is wrong or that you know someone, and you have some relationship with one of the people in front of you. It's the appearance of impropriety would be my guiding principle. And as Ms. Davis said earlier, there's a reallotment system here in Jefferson County, the 13 circuit judges. If I thought there was even the appearance, just even the hint of a bad look about a case, I would recuse and put it back in. It would be reallotted to one of the other 12 judges. And as Ms. Davis said, I would get one of their cases back of a similar nature so that the workload is evened out across all 13. But again, this goes to this idea of restoring trust in our judges here in Jefferson County. By maintaining this level of transparency, by avoiding even the appearance of impropriety, I think trust in the justice system can be boosted across the county. I think, but by each judge taking that on, that's how we'll restore some of this trust that I think has been lost.
Hey, Yvette?
Yeah, that I agree. The appearance of impartiality is important, and you want judges who are going to be fair and impartial. If you have reason to believe, if you have a credible reason to doubt that the folks in your courtroom in this case might think that they're getting a fair shake, it is incumbent on the judge to make that call and to recuse themselves. And I would have no problem doing that. I think that it's important to put things in writing. Being an appellate attorney, I value like building a record and having judges lay out their explanation and their reasons for why they make the decisions and the rulings that they make. So I think that goes a long way in helping rebuild accountability and trust and transparency. Because a lot of times judges they get these recusal requests or motions, and they're not all credible. So that's just the truth. That's just what happens. So when you are able to reduce things to writing and explain yourself, which is what judges should have to do, I think that goes a long way for the community.
Okay, Karen?
I agree with my colleagues. It is definitely the appearance, excuse me. It's the appearance that is the standard of law. What that means is that if there is a true appearance that you cannot be fair and impartial, or the defendant or the Commonwealth or another litigant doesn't feel like you have that appearance, then it can be a proper recusal. I will piggyback on what Yvette was talking about, though. I do think that judges have to be careful and mindful of their decision in the recusal process. I can think of at least two situations here in Jefferson County where there was a volume of recusals against particular judges in order to disqualify them in every single case. And that was improper. And what judges can't do is allow themselves to be bullied by either side and just sign off on a recusal motion just because someone says that there is an appearance. There has to be that true appearance of unfairness. Now, I have filed many recusal motions myself as a defense attorney, most outside of Jefferson County, but I've filed them here in Jefferson County as well. And there can be a legitimate basis. I've been the subject of a recusal motion when I've appeared in front of my former law partner, where there was not a bias. So, all of that to say is I certainly agree that restoring the faith in the judiciary is extremely important, and we want to respect that law, but also not allow it to be abused.
May I add something? I think it's important that you have a judge who has thick skin and doesn't take everything so personally. I think a lot of times recusal motions are not taken, they're taken personally, and judges often take offense to it. So just for the record, I would not take offense to it. And if I did, it would never manifest in a way that would give anybody any reason to doubt my competence as a judge.
Shannon?
As we said, there's sometimes you have to just because how it looks, but that probably, I can't see that happening a lot other than when I had so many clients that obviously they can't appear in front of me because even though I wouldn't treat them differently, somebody else might think they get a better deal because of that. So I'd have to recuse myself of all my former clients. Otherwise, it really comes down to the ones that we're talking about before. I've asked judges to recuse, but there were reasons for it, and the judges recused themselves. The one that Karen's talking about, that should not have been fair, but the judge, because she was knocked out for something that wasn't her issue anyway. Because judges are supposed to treat everybody fairly equally, and this judge was going to, so there was no reason to recuse her. Now, like I said, the only time I ever asked to recuse judges is because they had a conflict with the other party in the case. And that's when you have to they had to go off the case, and they agreed to do that because it looks bad. There was no way around that. So the optics are bad because we want people to trust us when they come into the system. If they don't trust us, there's no reason for them to believe anything that's going to happen to them is correct.
Okay, I've got one more question for you here on my list, and I'm going to start with you, Yvette. So what have been the most effective methods for improving court efficiency and procedures, and do you have any other methods that you would suggest?
I think the use of technologies, folks have said already, like Zoom. I think it's important to keep up with these trends in technology and advances. Being an appellate attorney, I really wish I could e-file my briefs. I have to, anytime I want to file a brief in the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeals, I have to make hard copies and send them to the court in the mail. It's expensive. It's costly. It takes time. I wish that we were using the resources that are available to us to make things move along faster. It's that simple for me.
All right. Karen?
So I'm going to say a lot of similar things that my colleagues have said. I do think that our use of technology is extremely important. One thing that Tracy was talking about was when orders come out, they can be entered electronically and sent to the attorneys electronically, so that they immediately are available and can be utilized. I actually currently serve on the jail policy committee as the private bar member. And one of the things that I routinely talk about is the horrible communication that we have between all of the courts and the jail. The way that the system works is they get emailed something, but then they turn it into a hard copy. We go back to the paper, and papers get lost. There seems to be confusion about the orders. If the orders don't match, people don't get released. So in looking at that in particular, I've spent a lot of time working on this committee and thinking about ways to improve, and look forward to my voice being stronger as a judicial member and not as a private bar member. But I think we need to start streamlining things. Because we do work with so many judicial partners, and I know at least Ted and I believe have talked about our clients being held in jail longer than they're supposed to. And it can come down to a very simple thing. So I recently talked with one of the administrators in the jail about putting a manual together. The order has to say this in order for it to be effective. I would also like to figure out a better system for that communication. And in district court, one of my passions I know I talked about is expungements. And one of the things I would like to see is that process moving a lot faster. People especially on dismissals, for example, they have a right to file that expungement 60 days after the dismissal. But what happens is, I mean, at that point, the case, in my opinion, should be expunged. But what happens is you file that and it might not get looked at for 3 or 4 more months. And then the order takes about 6 months to process now. So somebody that should have had their record clean in 2 months are looking at potentially a year down the road before they can get a job, before they can maybe change their line of work, or anything else that they need a clean record for. And I think that that's really unfair. And so I would like to work with district court. We have to work together as a bench, which is why it's so important to have so many like-minded individuals on the bench working together. But I would like to figure out a system that those cases that really, it's a cut and dry, it shall be done. That's the law. That judges are looking at those immediately, and those orders are getting signed and entered. And we can do all that off docket, creating those kind of better systems. So I have lots of plans. I won't take up too much more time, but I think that we have lots of areas that we can improve to make our judicial system work better for our entire community.
Okay, Shannon.
Yes, it is definitely technology, because the federal court system switched immediately in March of 2020, and we're still having hearings. I have yet to have a hearing in the federal building since then. I have one next month. It'll be my first time I've been in the building since then, because everything has been online or on the phone, and they've been doing it that way. A couple times with our system in district court, though, the judges signed them. They were never put into the system. So even the court, it says that something's done, I can't get a copy of it. And that's been a problem. Of course, if we do it electronically, then you have it immediately. So I had a client who had an immigration issue, and I couldn't get a copy of it, even though the judge had signed it. I got an email to the judge saying they signed it. I never got a copy of it because it never put it into the file. And since we don't have a standard where right now it's usually paper, always paper, and it doesn't, if they sign it digitally, the paper never went in. So it never counted. In family court, they scan everything in, so at least that you can look at that later. So we need some kind of way that everything is the same everywhere, so everybody can see it, because it's hurting people if they can't get their orders for any reason. Because there's always some kind of impact if there's a guilty plea that they need a copy of it for something.
Okay, Ted.
A lot of that you talk about something far more old fashioned. Zoom has been great and e-filing is great. And Ms. Davis touched on this. I think the way to improve efficiency in the court system is to focus on the people who work in the court system. Over 30% of the support staff of the court system statewide are on a form of government assistance. That means they work full time in courthouses of Kentucky, and they're not paid enough to keep a roof over their head and put food on the table for their children without another form of government assistance. That's unconscionable to me. The legislature passed raises for the judges of Kentucky in the last legislative session, and yet we continue to have people working in the courthouses who have to get government assistance to make ends meet. These are hard jobs. They're hard jobs under difficult circumstances and dealing with facts of cases that are psychologically traumatic. We ask them to come to work every day and deal with the facts and circumstances of these cases, and we don't pay them enough to survive on. That's what I would focus on. The other thing about these jobs, like so many jobs in our society, experience matters tremendously. We've all talked about our experience and how we think we're qualified to be the judge because I've done this or that and the other thing for 23 years. But it's the people who keep the courthouse running and their experience in those jobs that really make justice move smoothly. It's a job that takes years to learn. And so after 5 or 6 years, you're getting good at it and the wheels are turning and everything's going the way it's supposed to. And then your children reach an age where you can't put food on the table any longer. And so you quit. And so that constant churn, that constant turnover is what slows things down in my experience. And technology is fantastic. It can make everything move faster and lawyers don't have to drive downtown, but it's the people in the building that make the wheels turn. And I would focus on them as a form of efficiency and focus on giving people jobs that they can retire from so that someone comes to work in the courthouse at 20, let's say, and at 50, when they retire, they've got 30 years experience. They know how the courthouse works. They know how the judges work. They know how the dockets are supposed to move. They know how to move jurors through the building. They know how to move the cases through the building. That's what I would focus on in terms of efficiency, is the people.
I gotta say that answer really speaks to me. I used to work the attorney room at 6th and Jefferson.
That you know.
In a few years, and
Sure.
I don't know what they make now, but when I was there, it was $13 and some change an hour, and they hadn't received raises in years. These are some of the most hardworking, knowledgeable people I've ever worked with. And you're right, there was no way to make a living at that job for something as critical as what that job is. So thank you for bringing that up.
Lawyers and even the public need to be able to come in and say, look, there's what I call practicing law with an L, and then there's what I call getting stuff done. And the getting stuff done part of the job is just as important as the law with a capital L part. And that takes years of experience and quite frankly, also years of trust. The people that work in the courthouse have to know who they can trust to really move things around and move things efficiently and to really ensure that justice is being done. So I thank you for your work there.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Sorry. Last time we had people got laid off for a few days. It was only a few days, but it was for across the state. And I was filing bankruptcies for a lot of the clerks in the courthouse because just a couple of days was enough to kick them into bankruptcy because they didn't have anything else beyond that.
That's it. All right, so the only thing left is for each of you to make your final pitch. It's currently 7:16, but I want to ask you that I have a really good question in the comments. Do you all have time to take that?
Sure, what do you got?
Okay, this is from Melanie, and she asks, what alternatives are there during pretrial to cash bail, and what are your concerns to ending cash bail? And I'll start with you, Karen.
Sure. So unfortunately, we are a cash bail system. We until the law changes, that's where we are. We're a cash bail system. What I would say though is that the law itself has been manipulated to make the community believe that everyone should be in jail on $100,000 bonds. Most crimes, especially the ones in district court, are release crimes, are crimes that no one should be incarcerated on. No one should be being taken to jail on. In the first place, no one should be held on any cash bond. They are either, we have a pretrial service that will go through, say they're low risk, they're recommending ROR, release on their own recognizance, and then the request from the county will be a large cash bond, and it will get set. I think that's problematic. So, I think following the law in the first place and talking about alternatives, we do have things in our system set up. We have the opportunity to do surety bonds. So where someone just signs a piece of paper and says, I promise I will owe the court $1,000 if you don't come, if this person doesn't come back. That is, a good alternative when we're stuck in the cash bond system. Using additional forms of monitoring rather than cash bond, if you're going to follow the recommendation of ROR, such as the court monitoring system where someone calls in on the phone. We also obviously have the home incarceration program, which should be used sparingly. Starting in juvenile court, that is a very different system. Juveniles are not entitled to bond. They are either detained or released, and the majority are released. That's the way it is in the federal system as well. In the federal system, the burden actually shifts, which I think is a very good thing, that if it's a presumption of release, that the U.S. has to show that someone needs to be detained because that presumption prevails. But there are things that judges can do in looking at our current cash bail system, which is where we are, in order to more fairly apply and make more appropriate decisions on bond.
Okay, Shannon.
I agree with everything Karen said. The only thing is a lot of people don't realize when you release somebody on the home incarceration program, that costs them money. And a lot of the clients, so people coming in court don't have the fees, daily fees to go home on the monitoring system. So these are same people that should be released anyway because there's no risk. They're going to come back. Statistically, they will come back to court, whether or not you give them a bond. So making them pay to get out of jail doesn't make any sense. It defeats the whole purpose of letting them out if they can't. They would have to stay in jail or pay to get out. That doesn't even make any sense. You should be release them if they're not a danger to anybody.
Ted?
Sure. So I've been the pro bono lawyer for the Bail Project for the last 4 years, ever since the Bail Project came to Louisville. So I have seen many, many times the inherent inequities of our current cash bail system. It's not fair. It's not just. It's not equal treatment. Wealthy people get out of jail, and people of limited economic means stay in jail. It's just that simple. People with no money go to jail. People with money get out. Okay, so that's obviously unjust and unequal. So now we get down to the nitty-gritty of the debate we need to have about what comes next. There are many proposals. I am absolutely committed to comprehensive bail reform and to being a voice for comprehensive bail reform. As it exists now, if I'm elected and I take office in January, I'll use all the things Ms. Faulkner talked about: surety bonds, a court monitoring center, day reporting center. There's a whole toolbox of non-financial tools that a judge can use to monitor someone on pretrial release. Now, I am not someone who is just totally in love with the federal system. I know a lot of people just want to adopt wholesale the federal system and make that the Kentucky bond system. I do not think that that is an appropriate way to set bonds across the Commonwealth of Kentucky, but this is a debate we have to have. And I'm loving the fact that somebody texted in or direct messaged in this question, because it's a debate that I think everyone in the state needs to be intimately involved in. But clearly, cash bails exist in Kentucky. Is rife with problems and inequalities. I do think that there are ways, until we can get the debate finished, until we can have the debate and decide where we want to go next, I do think there are tools to relieve that pressure. And one of the pressures is, obviously, we have now had 11 people die in the Jefferson County Jail in, bless you,
Excuse me.
in 10 months. That is unacceptable. Every single one of those persons who died was being held on bond. The first thing we have to do is address the overcrowding and the deadly dangerous jail. Bond is a direct cause of that because people are being held there pre-trial on bonds that they can't make. So the debate needs to happen, but we are in a crisis situation right now. And I think that every judge in Jefferson County needs to take a very hard look at the jailed persons they have on their docket and see if there isn't some way to monitor them on a pretrial release to relieve the overcrowding in the jail. So those are all moving parts to this, but the overarching thing that I think everyone in this room, I don't want to speak for anyone else, but that I certainly believe is that comprehensive bail reform needs to happen. It needs to happen now.
Okay, Yvette.
Yes, I would just reiterate what these folks in the room have said. It's no secret that the United States has a fatal over-reliance on incarceration. And I don't see anything changing unless more folks like the person who commented start taking this to their legislators, their representatives, their senators, and demanding change.
All right. So we're just going to wrap it up now, and I'm going to give each of you a chance to speak to the voters and let them know why to vote for you, how to follow you on social media, how to get donations, how to get volunteers. And I'm going to start with you, Shannon.
Shannon Fauver, it's Fauver. There's Fauver for Judge is the website, .com. Of course, you can donate through that. You can follow me. You can also follow me on, let's see, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, even TikTok. And they're all Fauver for Judge. And I don't dance on all of the TikToks, I swear. Like, I don't dance at all. I talk about how you can register to vote and that kind of thing is on my TikTok, not anything else. But I want people to consider voting for me. And like I said, you can also Google me because I've been doing this for a long time and see the kind of work I do. And please consider voting for me on October. Sorry, it's been long, like November 8th. I'm sorry, already in October now.
Last day to register is October 11th.
Thank you. That's what I was going for. Thank you.
All right, Ted.
We're all exhausted.
Yeah.
My name is Ted Shouse. I'm running for Jefferson Circuit Judge in Division 7. We have a website called TedShouseForJudge.com. I want to be a voice for change and for improvement in the Jefferson County court system, and that's why I'm running. Thanks.
Okay, Yvette.
I just want people to know I don't take this opportunity lightly. I think being a judge is going to be really hard, and it's something that at times it scares me. But I think that that's like the appropriate response. I think whenever you're making decisions that affect people's lives and their liberty, it's something that should keep you up at night, and it's something that I again don't take lightly. And I just really want to be a judge because I think I will do a good job. And I want people to feel good about their elected officials. And I know that I'm somebody who people can trust. And I'll work hard for everybody in Jefferson County. I always have. And yeah, my website is YvetteDeLaGuardia.com. I have Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I have LinkedIn, but I don't check it very often. But ways that you can get involved is on my website under the Get Involved tab. So please reach out, even if it's just to hang out and meet for coffee, just to like talk so you can get to know me a little bit better. I would love to do that, and I look forward to hearing from you all. And I hope that you will vote for me on November 8th.
Real quick, do all of you all have yard signs available?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Getting asked about yard signs, but not anyone particular. So, okay, I assume we can get that to your website.
Also,
All
happy National Hispanic and Latinx Heritage Month to everybody out there.
And Karen?
Karen Faulkner, again, running for District Court Judge in Division 8. My website is votekarenfaulkner.com. I also, like my colleagues, have Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I am not TikTok savvy. It may happen, but not at this moment. There is a way for you to sign up for yard signs or get involved in any way. We have 1,000 boxes you can check. We would love to have you volunteering on our team, signing up for yard signs, signing up for a fantastic shirt. If purple's your color, we would love to give you one. You can wear it out around town, or anything that you feel like you can contribute. And certainly, this has been a fantastic opportunity in sharing this podcast with other people, getting on our social media and sharing out. We are all heavily endorsed. We are all heavily experienced. We have made good use of our social media, and just taking that moment to share that out to your friends, or send your friends texts, or send emails. About 2 weeks before the election, that's our get out the vote time. That's when people start really paying attention. So, take a minute and, reach out to your closest friends and ask them to text their closest friends, and ask them to text their closest friends, because there will never be change without people taking action. And we need your voice and your support. This really is a groundswell of votes by people for people. And we all want to make a better Louisville. And I'm asking that you vote for me on November 8th or November 3rd, 4th, or 5th, or on absentee ballot. But have all of that additional information on my social media or on my website, votekarenfaulkner.com.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. Thank you.
Thanks for doing this.
I really appreciate you all being here today. I have you all on because I think you all are the best 5, including Tracy here, candidates, judicial candidates on the ballot. So you all have my vote and my support. This is my first time interviewing any judicial candidates, so it's a great experience. I learned a lot today, and a really amazing discussion. So thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. I would go on
Thank
too.
you.
Appreciate it.
This is really cool. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this.
Absolutely. So let me just do a quick outro here and get on our way. All right, thank you all so much for watching today. I hope you got as much out of that as I did. Those are 5 fantastic candidates, so look for them on your ballot. They are not running against each other, so you can vote for all 5 of those. Thanks for tuning in. Check out my other interviews that I have out. Got 2 more coming up, scheduled in October, working on 4 others. Hopefully I can make those happen But I appreciate you all. You all know I am local, nonprofit, and independent. So the only way you can help me is just by helping me beat the algorithm, and that's by liking, sharing, commenting, smashing all those appropriate buttons. So thank you so much. Until next time, remember, always think critically.
Yeah.